Yeah, hey. Can you by any chance hear me? Because my Twitch does not show any reaction, even though it says that I am streaming. Can anyone confirm that I'm not talking into the void? AJ, thank you very much for confirming this. Well, yeah, I'm sorry for I'm sorry for the delay, but there was a thunderstorm and my poor Chili is always so afraid of thunderstorms, even now that she is, yeah, not really well. She might very well be in her last days, but this is what we thought 2 weeks ago, and she's still alive. She doesn't really want to let go. She's still eating some things. She's still going out. And, well, we will see. As long as she wants to live, I don't see any reason why she should not stay alive. But this thunderstorm really always drives her crazy, and I hope it is over now. If there is some weird sound and like cables breaking and the TV screens falling over, then it's Chili who climbed behind my streaming kit, and well, I hope this won't happen. Thank you for staying with me anyway, Spectre, CD Radar, AJ. Nice to have you on the stream. We are today back with a German subject that I wanted to do for a couple of weeks, and this is running against the current of traffic as NORAC and GCOR rules pose it, or wrong track movements as it is let out in the British rules in the RSSB rule book, or as it says in the German rules, Gleiswechselbetrieb, fahren auf dem Gegengleis, all that stuff. What, well, only is a thing at all if you have more than one track connecting the 2 points that you want to drive between with your train. So if you only have one line, like in the old days, it is obviously not a thing, because the direction of traffic, the current of traffic, then is in both directions, and there are obviously still lines that work that way, and that gives us the difficult task to prevent head-on collisions. Are we in Ruhr-Sieg Nord? This is where I wanted to go, yeah. Sometimes at the same time, yeah, when they are going on in both directions on the same time. We've seen this like a year and some months ago in Greece, how bad this can end up if two trains are running on the same line in opposite directions. And this shows us how great an installation is, where we have two lines and separate the traffic and have the traffic run on one line in one direction and in the other direction on the other line. And then you just have to find a way to agree on one side for the traffic to run, like in the United States and in Germany, Austria on the right side, Poland as well, as we've seen in SimRail, or on the left side, like in the UK or France or Switzerland, for example. Yeah, Chile. It's all good. It's all good. And then you can minimize the risk of head-on collisions, and you don't need very sophisticated systems like token systems or other thingies to make sure that the same line is not used by two trains in opposite directions. And nevertheless, sometimes the need can arise that a train goes into the track that is actually supposed to be the track for the opposite direction, and then special rules are necessary to make sure that the risk of head-on collision still is minimized. I can hear you, Chili. Just stay in the bathroom and you will be safe. at least from the thunderstorm. Yeah, and there are quite interesting rules in the different operating rules, and typically they require a lot of caution if you want to send a train in the opposite direction, the wrong direction, as the British rules put it. And there are, in my counting, at least 4 different modes of operation according to the German rules. How this can be achieved and done and used, only one is a regular mode of operation, and the other 3 are for like disruptions, malfunctions, to deal with it if you have to get your trains around a blocked track where a broken down train is sitting, or where construction work is going on and stuff like this. But there are still situations where you want to send the trains, or be able, at least as a dispatcher, to send the trains in the track for the opposite direction. And I have looked through my DLCs a bit and tried to find different situations where we get the signaling that is connected with the use of a track for the opposite direction. That is one in Ruhr-Sieg Nord to connect to last week, then one in Rhein-Ruhr Osten, what we have already seen when we talked about the Befehl 40 program, and then one situation in Hauptstrecke München-Augsburg that I want to use to demonstrate this. And at the same time I want to use some locos that I have not used before, sometimes because they are a bit weird, or maybe not my favorites, but nevertheless maybe just because I did not get around and overlooked them. Take this passenger service to Letmathe, where another driver will continue to run to Iserlohn. Yeah, okay, this is a short one, 18 minutes, and we are starting this very short formation, just a locomotive and the driving trailer on the other side, and running from Hagen station around until we are getting to Letmathe, and from there is a junction that is obviously not represented to Iserlohn. CD Radar says, I noticed there is no big diesel German locomotive, right? Yes, that's what I said. In the game, there is no 218, not the 248 or whatever you have. No, there is no big diesel German locomotive, just as well as there is no British electric locomotive. The 218, yeah, I've seen that on the locomotive. The 232 also, I have not seen them on the road not, but well, we'll see what we get there. But the British electric locomotive is something that I would have liked in the game for quite some time. All the diesels are British and all the electric stuff is German, more or less. Well, yeah. Let's drive this service. And to get to this junction that brings us to Iserlohn, we will be sent into the opposite direction track. What sometimes can happen if a train is supposed to go into a diverging line that is not accessible in a different way. And then the dispatcher has to put in a Fahrstraße that leads the train through the thing for the opposite direction. Yeah, this is our Baureihe 112.1 from Hamburg-Lübeck. What is pimped up 100 and... It's Alex Tigers, he says. Nice to have you on the stream. Pimped up 143. So you will find some things that are quite similar and some that are different. Switching on CIFA and PZB is more or less the same. The look and feel is a bit different. Reverser. We are not loading passengers here. The light switch is different, as you can see. Not separate switches, but for one selector. Then we are already losing our brake pressure. And we can see to get the train moving. And here this meter that tells us how the train is applying brake force or attraction force is always a bit clunky, in my opinion. It jumps from 0 to full in almost no time. Like this here, blink blong, blink blong. It's almost like a digital thing, like in a 1980s or 1990s game, where the animation is like 2 or 3 frames. So, can release, we can accelerate to 100 kilometers, and if I actually use a power setting of 100 or close to it, let's see what it does. We are aiming for 100, and it is throwing in the power, and we are overshooting so badly. That we are at 120, even though we were supposed to go to 100. And now it throws in all it's got in brake force to get us back to 100. So this is why I find it hard driving this locomotive here. So setting the force selector to a lower value sometimes make things a bit easier here. Easy with the cap locks, yeah, that is my CFA thing. CD Radar says that. To Alex, I can't hear the sound right now, but I'll be back in 10-30 minutes. So glad I'll be watching one of your streams. Very happy. So it's not me who is supposed to be careful with a caps lock, but nevertheless, easy on the CFA, easy on the caps lock. It's actually the same, since I got the CFA button on my caps lock. So if we want to use this locomotive, we have to really be easy on the force selector here. Otherwise, overshooting is almost inevitable. There must be some hydropower plant or something to the left here in the hill. At least that's what it looks like. And what do I have on Q? The AWS cancelling button. Doesn't do anything in German locomotives. But for British locomotives I've separated the AWS and the DSD. So vigilance, CFA, all this paddle stuff is typically on my caps lock, and I can operate it with my left pinky, and on the Q operate it with my, what is it, fourth finger. I can cancel the AWS alarm. On some locomotives it's mixed up though, like on the 377 I think it is both on the Q still. Alerter is sometimes here, sometimes there. Interesting choice of consist with one wagon. If it is like this in real life, they could have used the 425 instead. It's true. I don't know if this is a real thing. actually have the driving trailer on the other hand, so there is not a real only wagon in between. And this consist accelerates and slows down really like a dune buggy or something like this. So we will have to stop at Hohenlimburg first. It's a, well, 2-stop service only. And after Hohenlimburg we will get our first encounter with running on the wrong track. Well, it might not be technically true to call it the wrong track, because as long as there is signaling for the use in the wrong direction, it is no longer the wrong direction, but then it is a bidirectional line. But still, for purposes of German rules of operation, it is probably still correct to call it the Gegengleis. Even if it is a ständig eingerichteter Gleiswechselbetrieb. But we will get to the differences after this service in the presentation. What was nice to see is that on the 112 those buttons now work also for the Anfahrbremse. I'm not sure whether they did this from the start. So we have to slow down to 100. Did you see how this thing applied the brake? Bang! 0 to full application. And slow down to 100. We are 2 at the next signal. Self-debates are quiet. Yes. So, we are still on the regular right side. At a station, there is not such a thing as a Gegengleis or a track for the wrong direction or against the current of traffic. This only is a thing between stations on the open track. Flop. Still too sharp. The braking at the end. Don't forget that we got 1000 Hertz, so we will be in a restricted 1000 Hertz, limiting us to 40 when we start, and we probably don't want to release too early, because theoretically this repeater could give us a new 1000 Hertz. Monitoring. Flip, flop, flip. And off we go. Easy on the force. The invisible agent, says CD radar. So, we don't want to go faster than 40 anyway, because we get an HP2 here. Why we're getting an HP2 here, I'm not entirely sure. Because we're getting sent across a switch now. But a switch that can be traversed with 100 or 90. We don't know the timetable. Maybe the timetable gives us a different indication. What are you talking about, CD Radar? Never mind. Never mind. So here, across this switch, we can go 100 according to the line speed on this switch. And still we got slowed down to 40. That was probably not entirely necessary. Now we are already on the left track, as we can see. But we did not get an indication that we are supposed to go on the left track at the last signal. This is maybe because we are still at the station, inside the station limits. So there is no need when we are getting on a different track. But when we are leaving the station area, then we need always a specific indication, or actually an assignment, to go on the opposite track. And this is typically given by the signal ZS6. What is this funny thing here? So even if we are already on the left track, on the track for the opposite direction, this is just confirming that we are actually supposed to stay there, even if there is an opportunity to go back on the correct side. And if we're ending up on the wrong track outside of a station area on the left side without having gotten any assignment to do so, typically no signal of that kind, no indication in the timetable, then we should be extremely cautious, stop and call the dispatcher because then we are, in the worst case, on a collision course with a train coming from the opposite direction. So, again a new 1000 Hertz, because a VR2 announcing another restriction, but for now we got an HP1, can go line speed here, and we are allowed to stay on the left track. Just be careful not to accelerate beyond the 80. Not to overshoot too much, otherwise we will get our penalty brake. And slow down to the 40 again. So maybe that was a bit too optimistic. So we are too fast for the signal here. But at least we will make it back to the 40 until we get to the switch that we are aiming for here. You can see it. The 40 is from the switch. Now we're getting passed by the regio train, and here's our switch sending us a race. Yeah, another train is waiting there, so a lot happening, so busy. And now we're actually crawling with 40 on this track until we get to Letmathe. And if we look on the map, we will see that after our stop in Letmathe here on this track, on the, well, yeah, from our point of view leftmost track, it is that we are stopping here because we are taking this junction then to Iserlohn. That is not represented in the game, but this was the whole idea of sending us on the opposite track so that we can actually reach this track that does the branching off. And for that, the signal box logic has a Fahrstraße that sends us into the track for the opposite direction. Another 1000 Hertz from the VR0. If you set off your train and jump off, it will disappear in the portal. Oh yeah, that is true. I did this somewhere, I think in Oakwell. If you want to get the experience points for the service, then you mustn't be on the train when it runs into the portal, because from what I've seen, you're not getting the experience points then. So, are you stopping us? Yeah, you're stopping us a bit at least. Alright. And this is already the last stop for our service here in Iserlohn. You can see this is... Those are all trains that you can play services like the Regionalbahn, Regionalexpress, or those freight services. And we were branching off on this side so that the AI train can then go to the left here and go to Iserlohn on this isolated single track line across the river. Actually quite nice. They even put the signal here. "17 minutes. Was it actually 17 minutes or did it take much longer? 90 minutes 24 it says. And unnecessarily wide. 17 meters. That, where did you get this from? So, do they drive the train actually there? Is there any point in riding on this train on the second man seat maybe? Or is it just waiting here until the end of all times? One funny thing, if you're sitting in the second man seat, you can use the camera 8, not before you have used the camera 3. Well, don't know if this train is ever going to leave here. Maybe it is not. Maybe it is just running backwards to Hagen at some point. So we will leave it at that. Spectre says, "I'm wondering if train drivers sometimes have a bad feeling driving on the opposite track, psychologically, I mean." Well, to be honest, if I knew that everything that stands between me and a head-on collision with a train from the opposite direction is like what the dispatcher is doing or the station master, I might have a bad feeling about it. But typically, if all the safety systems are working and the signal box logic and the signals are working as they are supposed to, then... AJ, can you hear me? I think Caravan's out. Oh. Give me a second, I have to check on her. So sorry for this interruption. I had to wake AJ so that she can take Kara out. I think she needs out. And I can go to my presentation. Today is one of those days where you just have to take things as they come. Yeah, you can see the presentation, Gegengleisfahrt, running on the wrong direction track, on the against the current of traffic, and on the left, as usual, I have listed the modules where you can find something about it. It is dispersed across the Fahrdienstrichtlinie and the signaling book, so not one monolithic thing dealing with all the rules for running on the opposite track. But we have to, well, get it together. And as I said, there are 4 modes of operation, as far as I can see, that are connected with using the track of the opposite direction. And the first one would be the one that you build deliberately so that you can use the opposite track for your trains if you need them to run on this track. This would be in German the Ständig eingerichteter Gleiswechselbetrieb, a track switching mode of operation permanently installed. So this is a regular mode of operation. We would have a 2-track line from station A to station B, and our train is sitting here in our example on station A, wants to go on the right line to station B in this direction. Typically has an exit signal, starter signal, Ausfahrsignal, and before he is allowed into station B, he would get an Einfahrsignal, an entry signal, home signal, whatever you want to call it in your signaling system of choice. In German it would be Ausfahrsignal, Einfahrsignal, for example. That is the typical thing, but if we have the opportunity to send our train on the track for the opposite direction, then we can deal with situations that, for example, a second train is already on its way from A to B, a slower one, and we want a faster train to overtake this train, and we want to use it. We want to use both lanes in this direction to get our traffic faster ahead, and because maybe more trains are running from left to right than from right to left, and then it can come in handy if we can use the track for the opposite direction for overtake maneuvers and things like this. We can simulate this in SimRail MP as well, CD Radar says. Well, yeah, that is maybe just the thing. I had a look at the very simple dispatching signaling box in SimRail to see how this works, and this might actually be an interesting thing. You actually come to me, but don't climb behind my computer, otherwise you will throw everything down. No, this is a good place. Just stay there. Alright, and then we can send this train on the blue line through the opposite track. The thing is, if we are approaching the station B here, we need some kind of a signal that can stop the train before it goes into the station and allow the train to run into the station. So we need actually an home signal, an Einfahrsignal, also on the opposite direction line, not facing towards the station here, but facing for trains that are coming this way. And this is actually the essential thing about the permanently installed Gleiswechselbetrieb, that we have the signaling for this opposite direction, so that we have a line that is signaled in both directions. So for both directions we have all the signals that we need: exit signals, entry signals, signals in between, if there are anything, if block signals or signals at Anschlussstellen, Abzweigstellen and ähnlichen, and similar things, right? And also, and now I'm talking about HV system, but same goes for a KS system and an HL system. We need all the distance signals in the German system for it on the or signaled for the use of the opposite direction line. Sorry for bothering you. I want to offer promotion. Yeah, thank you very much for this. And the good thing of having the signals for the use of the other line in the opposite direction is that we can actually send our train on the way with a proceed aspect, with Fahrtstellung eines Hauptsignals. What is a good thing, because then we can actually go on faster speeds. Typically it will be signal that limits the train to a certain speed, like an HP2 limiting to 40 or whatever is stated in the Fahrplan, but obviously it can also be a situation in the KS system or in the HV system where you have a numeral giving you a different. Thank you, CD Radar, for taking care of this. And I put the 4 here for 40, but it obviously depends on how fast you can travel across this switch. To keep things simple, I will stay with the HV system, so we will get an HP here. Hey Alex, nice to have you back. Great, you're just made it for the presentation. Yeah, So here the signal box logic gives the dispatcher the opportunity to put the signals to a proceed aspect and send the train on the track for the opposite direction, because we have all the signaling here. And where are we going here? This direction. But at the same time, the train needs to get the assignment and allowance at the same time to use the track for the opposite direction as a safeguard, because if the driver realizes that he is or she is sent on the track for the opposite direction without this assignment, then he or she should stop the train and call the dispatcher and say there is something wrong. And one way of giving this assignment to the driver is the use of the set as 6 signal. This is this indicator here that looks in the rules like this, sometimes without the tilted endings here, typically with those endings here, as like a line that is made of different white lamps, so that they can be switched on and off, so that the signal can either let the train run on its normal line with a green signal, typically HP1, without the set as 6, and if the train is sent on the opposite direction, then with a speed limiting signal like the HP2 together with the set as 6, allowing the driver to go on the opposite direction. And this can also look like this, what we have seen on our service here, a bit more like on those indicators than typically in this diamond shape a signal screen, but sometimes also on a squarish one. So this is the same signal, it looks a bit different. The thing is that you have this tick tick tick, this line that is tilted twice, so that you can see it's more or less indicated that you're just getting switched over to the other side of the track. And then we can use the signaling on the opposite side to get our train safety into the station. Again, we would probably get, if we want the train again on its regular side, speed limiting signal, because we then are sent across a switch again. What happens if we have like something in between where the train would have the opportunity, the technical opportunity to go back to the right, the correct, the regular track, like here a Überleitstelle, crossover. And if we have a situation like this, then at every crossover, typically we would have signals, crossovers, junctions, and things like this. We can obviously use the signals to allow the train to pass by, but for every situation where the train technically can go back to the correct track, we have to repeat the assignment that the train is still allowed to stay on the wrong direction track. So this might come sometimes as a surprise, that you are getting a sign like this and you're still staying on the track that you have been already before. So you're not necessarily have to run across a switch when you're getting this sign, but you are getting confirmed that you are allowed to stay on the wrong direction. That cute little signal, the city radar. Well, yeah, I had to minimize my signals a bit so that they fit onto my cheat sheet here. So one big takeaway is, as soon as we have the technical possibility to go back to the correct track, we have to repeat the assignment that we are allowed to stay on the opposite track. There is a workaround for this. If we want to save on those signals, we can write something into the timetable, into the Fahrplan. If there is an entry for this signal here that says block signal without set as 6, then you can stay on the track for the opposite direction without this signal being repeated. So this is a way to, well, save on those signals if trains always stay on the opposite direction track here. So this assignment can come out of the timetable directly, but here you can read it up in the regulations. But typically you would have this signal repeated. What if, for example, the train is not starting on the lower track but on the other track, or is already on this track, as long as the train is in the station. It is not on the opposite track, because at the station there is no track for the wrong direction. But in this situation, the train does not have any technical opportunity, or it is technically impossible for the train to leave the station into this direction without use of the track for the opposite direction. Then we can also use a sign, a fixed sign that is fixed to the signal here, that allows the train to leave the station nonetheless and stay on the opposite direction track as long as it until it can get back to the correct track, which will be here at this crossover. So this is why this Z6 here is a switchable one that can be turned on or off, just in case if we need it or not. But this is why sometimes this sign is also a non-switchable one that is always on. Spectre says a lot to keep in mind when driving. Yeah, that is true. And I have to admit, when I started playing this game, I did not really pay attention whether I'm driving on the right side or the left side, and on what track I am ended up, because it was not in my hands anyway. It was the dispatcher's thing how to set the switches, and that would be okay then. But it is, if you think about it, quite essentially, if you end up in the track for the opposite direction, the risk of ending up in a head-on collision is significantly higher. And then it is nice that you have to check out if you still got the assignment to stay on the track for the opposite direction, because then it is normally safeguarded. Did you need to go out? Alright, good, then this was correct. Thank you very much. And then it is more or less safeguarded that no other train will be allowed to go into this line from the opposite direction. Yes, that was the regular mode of operation. If we want to use the opposite direction track on a regular basis, then we need all the signaling in both directions on this track, and we need enough Z6 opportunities or entries in the timetable that give us the opportunity as a dispatcher to enable us to tell the driver that it is okay to use the track for the opposite direction. And this is what happened in our service here when we were routed to those tracks in Letmathe, where we had to stay on the left side so that we are able to branch off to Iserlohn at a later point. And the other three opportunities are, or the other three modes of operation are, if anything goes wrong. So let's look at this situation again. I got rid of this crossover to make things not too overcrowded here. Let's say this is our train, this is the normal line, exit signal, entry signal, and the train that is already on the line breaks down. For some reason cannot go on anymore. And we still want those trains going from left to right not to clog up, like in our red light issues that we had in the game a couple of months ago, but we want to route them around this train. So this is obviously malfunction. This is something out of the regular, and for that it is nice if we can use the track for the opposite direction, that our train can go this line here. The thing is, we don't necessarily have all the signals to use this line in the opposite direction, because normally we don't use it for this purpose, and having signals, putting them there and maintaining it always costs a lot of money, and is also a source of a possible malfunction. As soon as the signals are malfunctioning, you cannot really properly use your line anymore. And this is why we don't want to use too many signals that we regularly don't really need. So what would we have here on this opposite direction track in the direction that we use it? Typically only, instead of a distance signal, an isolated NE2 signal, distance signal board that fulfills the function of a distance signal, and instead of an entry signal we would have a trapezoid board, the NE1 Trapeztafel, at least since a couple of years. Typically those thingies will be something like secondary lines, not main lines, but secondary lines, like in the Niedertalbahn, for example, something like this. But for opposite track entries to station, those trapezoid boards have been installed quite a lot. And if the trapezoid board is used in this context, then it typically has a little sign giving you a kilometer number. So if you see a trapezoid board with this kilometer number, then you can know that this is replacing an entry signal for this station when you're coming out of the ordinary along the line for the opposite direction. So we skip actually a switchable working signaling system, but put up signs that are always there in case that if need be, we need to send our train along the track for the opposite direction. You can read this up here in the signaling book, 1401, section 1, paragraph 4. And how do we get our train over there? Because obviously we cannot switch our signal here to a proceed aspect, because this Fahrstraße, this path, is not in the signal box logic. And this only leaves us with the thing, a written order. Order number 2, fahren Sie am haltzeigenden Ausfahrsignal vorbei. Into the track for the opposite direction. So pass this stop signal when exiting the station. So B for Befehl, order number 2. That would allow the driver to pass the signal. We need to do the Befehl 40. Press our preceded B override, not faster than 40, and need to have a written order. So someone has to actually bring the order to the train and the driver has to put it in his clip and to have it in his cab. Without this written order he can't drive. This would therefore be Fahrt auf Befehl, movement allowed by orders, and orders is a very flexible thing, because with orders, the dispatcher can tell the driver a lot of things that the driver has to do and how he has to behave and drive, or she has to drive her train. But it is sometimes a bit clumsy, because getting a written document into the cab here requires some logistics and is difficult. Even sending the order via radio has to follow a quite complicated procedure, where the dispatcher tells the driver, then the driver has to repeat and write it down and all that stuff, right? So it is a bit clunky and clumsy, but it is quite flexible. So it is the last level if all the other easier things fail and don't work anymore. And it is not enough that the driver is allowed to leave the station here passing the red signal with the order number 2. We would also need order number 4, so that allows the train to go into the opposite direction track. The order number 4 is more or less the assignment that we would have given the driver with the ZS6 sign in the regular installed track switching mode of operation. Then the train approaches the station, and then it depends whether the train is supposed to stop at the trapezoid board. Then the order number 7 would be the one that the driver is getting. Then the train stops in front of the trapezoid boards, radios the dispatcher, the Fahrdienstleiter, that is the one in charge for station number B, and then the dispatcher here would give the driver a new order that allows him to pass this trapezoid board and enter the station. And since we are driving allowed by orders if you think back of our video about Zugfahrt auf besonderen Auftrag, we have talked about that if we are running on Befehl 2, 4 or 7 or 6, then we are running on besonderen Auftrag, not on 7, because 7 does not allow us to run somewhere, but 2 or 4, 1 or 6, we will see them, is something that leads to Zugfahrt with besonderen Auftrag, train service and special assignment, and then we are limited to 40 unless the orders give us different orders that allow us to go faster, but typically then we are limited to 40 on this track. So we are a train service on special assignment. So if you want to rewatch those videos, you are invited to do so. To get into the station then, the dispatcher that is in charge of this station has to give the driver then an order number 1. Fahren Sie am Trapez, an der Trapeztafel vorbei in den Bahnhof hinein, so enter the station by passing the Trapezoid board. Then it is again a train service on special assignment, but because of the order number 1 here. There is a way that if the dispatcher can actually allow the train to enter station B, because he is in charge of station B as well, then he can give the order number 6 that allows the train to pass the trapezoid board without stopping and enter the station here. Then we don't need an order number 1 here. But typically we would have 2, 4, 7 here, pass the red signal, go into the opposite track, and then stop at the trapezoid board and wait for a new order number 1 given by the dispatcher in charge of this station. But also with the B6 it is possible that the dispatcher sends the train without stopping at the trapezoid board in there. Quite flexible thing with all the orders, but we need to get the orders to the driver, so this is a bit of a clumsy way of doing it. This is why there are some things in between. Same situation, broken down train. We want to send our train around it on the track for the opposite direction, and this is something that we have seen in the Zugfahrt auf besonderen Auftrag videos already. This is the movement allowed by wrong track replacement signal. We have talked a lot about the replacement signal, sometimes also called a subsidiary signal, but I call it a replacement signal because we in the German system have so many signals that are covered with subsidiary signals in other operation rules. Here it is the ZS8. You remember those 3 lights in a delta formation on the HV signal was the ZS1 Ersatzsignal, replacement signal, that allowed us to pass the red signal in case of a malfunction, in case of some reason that the dispatcher was not able to give us a proceed aspect, but was still sure enough that it is safe to pass the signal. To cut it short, there is a whole video about the Ersatzsignal, and if those lights are not lit up steadily but they are flashing, then it is also something like this Ersatzsignal, but now at the same time allowing us to use the track for the opposite direction. On other signaling systems than the HV, like on the KS or the HL, we would get this newer version, that is the ZS6 for flashing. Those 2 signals are the same, either the 3 lights that we know from the ZS1 Ersatzsignal flashing or the ZS6 flashing. The interesting thing is that it is flashing that allows us to go into the opposite direction track and pass the red signal at the same time. And again, since we are driving on ZS8, as we have seen in the stream about the Zugfahrt auf besonderen Auftrag, we are a train service on special assignment limited to 40. Not necessarily on site, unless we're getting different orders, but 40. Because we're not driving on ZS7, but on ZS8. The signaling that we encounter on our opposite direction track will be the same as we encountered here when we are driving on order. We would get an isolated NE2 board, and then this is getting really interesting now. How do we get into the station now? Are we getting a trapezoid board? No. In situations where we have an ZS8 installed here, we should also have a signaling that allows us without orders to get into the train into the station again. But since we do not have an entry signal here, we will have to fix this somehow. And this is this funny situation where we are using this shunting signal that is guarding the entrance for shunting services here into the station. That is sitting, as you can see, not on the left side like we typically have. I did not mention this, right? When you're driving on the opposite direction track and have signaling, it is typically on the left side, not on the right side. Usually we have it on the right side when we are running on the regular lines. But if we are running on the opposite direction track, then the signals are supposed to be on the left. So they are always on the outside, typically, the signals. If we're running on the opposite direction, they are left. If we're running on the regular track, they are on the right. But here, this shunting signal would be on the right side when we are coming from here. And since we are a train service, we would still have to stop at the HP0, the red shunting signal here. That is not the problem. But as we know, this signal is a main signal. It typically has the main signal board attached to it. But it can only be switched to SH1, not to an HP1, not to a green aspect, not to a proceed aspect, only to an aspect that no longer stops the service, but does not give the train permission to go on. That is what the green signal typically does. The dispatcher tells the driver that he or she can go on with the train service. The SH1 cannot do that. The HP0 can stop the train, but the SH1 cannot allow the train to proceed, typically. In this situation, we make an exception from this rule and allow the train, still being a train, not a shunting service, to enter the station from the opposite direction by virtue of the SH1 signal, what is highly out of order typically, because the SH1 is typically not strong enough, because it does not convey any information about the block status or whatever, to allow the train to go anywhere. But in this situation we allow this. The problem still is that it is on the wrong side, because if you're running on the opposite direction, then we want to have our signals on the left side. And how do we fix this? We put up a checkerboard, a chessboard board, Schachbretttafel, NE4, that has on the left side then, and this tells us a signal that is supposed to be on the left side is somewhere else, maybe on the right side, or there is a track in between, or it is somewhere else at all. And so we can fix this situation that the train coming in this station here, the driver looks on the left looking for the entry signal, sees the checkerboard, is told to look somewhere else, sees the shunting signal here showing SH1 after the train stopped at the HP0, and here, as an exception from the rule, the train may enter as a train service the station. Stay a train service, does not get converted into a shunting service and gets back onto the proper line. So this is what you can read up here. It is a thing that is totally out of the system here. But this is well, a cost-saving installation. We don't need to put up an entry signal here. We are just off-label using the shunting signal as an entry signal for trains coming on the wrong direction track. I find this very interesting. This is one of the things that are mentioned here as one of the versions of train service and special assignment. And if you think back of the video that we did about the train service and special assignment and the cheat sheet at the end, then you might remember that I put in the SH1 with an exclamation point, that only in certain situations the SH1 can lead to a train service and special assignment. Super interesting. It only happens in the west of Germany. 301 territory in the east, they actually had a much better solution that is already or is for quite some time, as it is said everywhere, is also used in the west now, because this is really awkward, this situation here with the checkerboard and the shunting service, and then using this as an entry signal. What do they have or in the east and also using in the west? We are using a signal here that is on the left side. It is a so-called Niedrigstehendes Hauptsignal, a low main signal, a low standing main signal or low sitting main signal. It is a signal that shows a red aspect all the time. Constantly a red bulb is on all the time, and it is sitting low. That means it is not put up on a mast, but it is sitting down in the ballast on the floor. It is a box showing a red light constantly. Okay, under the snow, CD Raiders is used, then it is especially helpful if it is covered under the snow or the falling leaves or whatever. Yeah, how does it help us? It stops the train from entering the station. Yeah, but how do we get the train into the station then? The only other aspect that this signal can show is a ZS1 Ersatzsignal, a replacement signal. Not the flashing variant, but the steady lit up variant. Usually the one that we see on the HV signals with the delta formation, 3 white bulbs. So this can be lit together with the red aspect, and this allows the train to enter the station again as a train service on special assignment. At least this is more to the system, or it fits better to the system than making an exception for using an SH1 to allow a train to go anywhere and using the checkerboard to off-label use our shunting signal that we have here. So this is actually what fascinated me most about the thing about the use of the opposite direction track. How you can work around problems like this while at the same time saving costs or trying to save costs. And it gives you a lot of insight about the system of train services versus shunting services and the signaling as a whole. So I hope I don't bore you with this, but by talking about this so thoroughly. But this is something that fascinated me most. So one slot is still open. We had the permanently installed track switching mode of operation, and we had those thingies that are especially for dealing with some malfunctions if the line is blocked. There is one more thing that is not the permanently installed track switching mode operation, but a temporarily installed track switching mode of operation. Same situation again here to start with, but then we don't have a broken down train here, but we have construction work going on, so that this line is not blocked only for a day when the train is sitting in here, or a couple of hours, but for a couple of days, weeks, months, whatever, so that we cannot use this line here and have to operate our trains between station A and station B as on a one track line here. So it's just one line that needs to be used in both directions. So the trains running from left to right would have to use the opposite direction track. And how do we do that? We do it with a proceed aspect. The thing is, how can we actually give a proceed aspect here for the train? Well, for this we just modify the logics in our signaling boxes. They are just modified in a way that the signals can allow a proceed aspect for this line here. So even if this line here is not clear, the signal can be switched to a proceed aspect. Die Signalabhängigkeit wird teilweise aufgehoben, they say. So typically those signals cannot be switched to a proceed aspect if the line is not clear, but well, this will be just modified in a way that they can be switched to a proceed aspect, even if this line where they are working on is not clear. Yeah, well, this is nice, but then we have to make sure that the train running here actually gets signals. We could install for this time all the signals that we have on our permanently installed ones, but this is difficult and expensive, and maybe we can deal with that easier. The thing is, for the first, we just put this permanent ZS6 sign here, because those trains are always going into the track for the opposite direction. And then we have, because we have that on the opposite direction, the isolated NE2 boards. And on the other side, on the track that cannot be used, because this is our regular track, we have our normal distance signal for the entry signal here with an NE2 board. So why not use this signal here, even if it is 1-2 tracks to the right and not on the left as it is supposed to be? Well, we do a simple trick and physically remove the NE2 board from this distance signal. Then it stops being a distance signal, and this NE2 board more or less snaps to this signal head here now, so that the NE2 board on the opposite direction and the signal head 2 tracks to the right now form our distance signal. This signal, this NE2 board now makes this signal the relevant signal for our trains running on the opposite direction track here from left to right. Why not use a checkerboard? I think this only works with the main signals properly, and maybe then we would still have the signal not assigned to our line here. And CD Radar says, why this? Wow, this must be super dangerous. Yeah, Spectre, I cannot really tell you why in this situation we are not using a checkerboard. Maybe because it is more clear if we remove the NE2 board here and put it on the other side here, so that we are not looking with the checkerboard for our signal wherever, and think that this signal is only for the other line that is still there, right? Even if they are working there, the line is still there, and typically we would think the signal is not for us. Where we use a checkerboard is here for the entry signal again, because we don't have an entry signal for the station here, so we use the checkerboard again. That puts us to the main signal on the other end, on the other sign, on the other line side. So this is replacing our not existent entry signal by pulling in the one for the non-used line. Why we're not doing this with the distance signal, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe this works as well, and maybe even removing the NE2 board and having the NE2 board here as well installed anyway is the easier solution. Because the NE2 board is here anyway, so we don't have to put up a new signal. We just have to remove the NE2 board here from the distance signal. I guess that's why it is. But well, I'm proud enough that I found out, and I think I more or less understood all those things here anyway. Why certain things are done, how they are done. If we maybe encounter a real expert on this, and this person can comment on this video, be ever so great. Yeah, and CD Radar, coming back to you, what you said, wow, this must be super dangerous. It is super dangerous. It allows us to let the train enter with a proceed aspect into the station again with a switchable signal, what is a nice thing. And those signals are not used for this line where they are running the construction work anyway. So it is quite clever to use those signals for this path. But as you say, it is super dangerous. And because it is super dangerous, we are also removing the preceded magnets. Well, detaching it from this line, moving them over to the other line, bringing in our 1000 Hertz, 500 Hertz, 2000 Hertz magnet over to the other line, so that the isolated NE2 board and the checkerboard are all protected with the preceded magnets. And also in the law, the the publication where all the temporary speed restrictions and stuff like this and construction work is published, it must be stated for this piece of track that Gleiswechselbetrieb, GWB, the track switching mode operation, is temporarily installed for this piece of track so that nobody gets surprised. And CD Radar says that signal could not show proceed aspect if the switch behind it is set for another direction. You mean that one, the entry signal here? You mean if this switch here is set for this other direction, you cannot see proceed aspect? Well, since they are modifying the signal box logic anyway, they would have to modify this signal just that it works in a way as if it was installed where the checkerboard is installed. So show limited speed proceed aspect if the train is going across the switch, or a proceed aspect if the train is supposed to run into this line here. Because at the station, again, we don't have an opposite direction track, but only tracks that can be used in each and every direction. I guess it is cheaper and easier to do it that way. At least this is what I have found out, or think I have found out how it is done or can be done. If this is actually a thing that is done a lot in real life, I don't know. Or what else can be done in cases of construction work. But those 4 modes of operation I have come up with. Only one is a regular mode of operation. Sometimes we want to use the track on the other side. And this is something that happens in the game as well. The other thing are always exceptions to the regular mode of operation, Abweichungen vom Regelbetrieb, that deal with construction work or malfunctions. So all those thingies are to deal with something that is out of the ordinary. Either on orders alone, or we have at least the wrong track replacement signal stuff installed with this very interesting stuff to get the train into the station again, or for construction purposes we can temporarily use the signals that are there for the line that cannot be used on our other track. And CD Radar says, yes, let's say most of the tracks have signals in both directions. That is the best thing anyway, if we have it signaled both ways, and on important main lines and stuff, you will have it in both directions anyway. And then you can send the trains wherever you want to send them. Those 3 things would be really nice if something like this can happen in the game sometimes, somewhere. Well, we have actually the possibility in the game to have services only happening in certain seasons, on certain days. So we have a full 365 days here. So why not let's have some construction work appear in February or something like this, or even on a specific day have a broken down train. Yeah, in a scenario at any rate, but it can even be done in the timetable mode. It's not necessarily a random event, but it can be programmed for the 365 days calendar cycle. At least I think it can be done. Or in a scenario it is more easy anyway. And they are trying to get in more of those temporary thingies in the scenario anyway. And as we have seen in SimRail, they are quite upfront with getting stuff that is out of the ordinary into the game. And yeah, we will getting back to this, but you have something quite similar in the Polish system, where you also have a Wyskaźnik that is just a simple line climbing or falling from left to right, white on black, that needs to be on a signal to tell you that you are sent into the opposite direction track. Great! Thank you so much. And you can set yourself everywhere in free roam. That is true. And then we can actually check if the switchable set is sixes and all the paths are in the signals. If we put our train on the wrong track, and well, the thing is, it is not so easy to force the train to get into the opposite direction track. It requires some planning, because otherwise the pathing will always keep the train on the correct track, on the regular track. And sometimes it tells you there is no way to get there. But it is possible in some situations, and then you can actually see if the signals will show you a set is 6. Well, I hope you enjoyed this presentation about the track switching mode of operation, Gleiswechselbetrieb, and the use of the opposite track. I think it is a very interesting matter, even if it is not so big in the game. But nevertheless, I think you can learn a lot by about the logic of signaling systems. And CD Radar says, hey, on the Semmeringbahn, on the other hand, it is a problem to keep the train in the right direction. Is it? I have not acquired the Semmeringbahn yet. So what happens there? I have to switch my DLC marker in the meantime, and wanted to go to... where did I go? Texts, DLCs. To Rhein-Ruhr Osten. I think this is the service that we already used once. That we already used once for the Befehl 40. Now I'm getting confused here. But we're using it on a different time. And now I put on the service into the DLC caption, what is obviously nonsense. I'm getting there. And here I am. Rhein-Ruhr Osten. Timetable. What did I want to use? The 185.5, not the one from Rhein-Ruhr Osten, but the one from Dresden. Because when I tried to do this earlier, oh no, you don't want to hear a Traxx 2. This is why I rarely use a Traxx 2. But this time I said I will use all the locomotives that I usually don't use. You run mostly with your own trains. On the Semmeringbahn, yes, I saw that. Yeah. Our Traxx 2 cockpit. LZB, PZB, CIFA. Headlights. We will run it in P with PZB mode M. 187 goes brb. Says Spectre. Well, I still don't own the 187, the Traxx 3. Since I want to do a brake test before we start this, at least some things that are nice about the Traxx 2. For example, our brake indicators here. We have an indicator for the brakes on the rear bogie, one on the front bogie, and one for the spring-loaded brake, the parking brake, Federspeicherbremse. Parking brake is released, this is why it is green. The brakes on the bogies are applied, so this is why we have it red with the dot in the middle. Since I want to do a brake test, I apply my parking brake, and you can see, plop, it is actually working, and it has switched to red. The parking brake is applied. Do we have lights? We have lights. Lights are on. Our brake pipe is filled to 5 bar. That is good. Our main reservoir is at about 9. That is acceptable. And we can see, since we have set, if you have the reverser to off, the train should actually apply not brakes, but it should lock the brake pipe and the cylinders. If we are going to forward, the brake cylinders drained here. Why did they drain? Because all the brakes for the direct brakes are in release. Also for the train brake is only 1A. Let's release them fully, so that we have our 5 bars fully in the brake pipe and no pressure on the brake cylinders. The train is also only held in place by the spring brake now at the moment. And we can do our brake test. Direct brake, we would expect the brake pipe to stay at 5 bars as it is, because we are filling air directly into the brake cylinders at the loco. But both bogies, it looks like one hand, but it's actually 2 hands, red and yellow, should go to about 4 bars if we apply the direct brake. Yes, that works and can be released. And see, the radar says, ooh, you know where to. This is working on the Vectron. Yes, but the Vectron we had already, and I want to use all the locomotives that I have and that are in the game, and today is an opportunity to use the old and boring Traxx too, and so we will use it, which by the way has correct sound that doesn't give you a headache. Please switch off the sound for a moment. Okay, and then using the train brake. For the train brake, we expect the brake pipe to drop to 3.5 gradually, as long as we are going up to full service. Full service would be 3.5. Brake cylinders fill up to 4 bars again, and then if we go into fast brake, emergency brake, then draining the brake pipe to 0, and we are not actually getting more air into the brake cylinders, but it should happen faster. So the first thing that we would probably test is the emergency brake, the Schnellbremsung. We just yank the lever to the back. We see the main brake pipe go to 0, and our brake cylinders are actually not going to 4 when they stop at 3.5. That is okay. We release it again, and the brake pipe should fill to 5, and eventually the brake cylinders should also deplete to 0. And at the same time, the brake indicators for the bogies should at some point turn to green. As soon as the brake pipe is full and the brake cylinders are empty, we are getting greens on both bogies. So this corresponds with the 0 indication here. If we are going gradually up, the thing is with the... Did you ever wonder why we have this 1A and 1B and then 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on? And I've never seen that this actually works on this old locomotive. The thing is, if you're setting from running to 1A, actually nothing should happen. Especially the brake pipe pressure should not be dropped, and you should not get any air into the brake cylinders. So what is it good for then? As soon as it put it to 1B, we lose a bit in the brake pipe and we get some pressure in the brake cylinders, and with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then full service, we should be at 3.5-ish, and the brake cylinders are more or less full again. On Vectron you get the 1B first, and then the 1A. This is correct. I remember William saying something about this before he implemented this for the brake valve here. So you are actually switching directly from running to 1B, and you can only get to 1A if you're going backwards again. the thing how it will work in real life, it's actually like it is done here, I think, because you can obviously put your switch to 1A, but nothing happens at first, and I just have to release it so that our brake cylinders are empty again, so that we can start anew. 1A doesn't do anything. 1B gives us some brake applications. So what is 1A for then? The thing is, if I go back to 1A, I release the brakes a tiny bit, but I'm still not at fully released brakes again. So what is this good for? If I understood this correctly, then this has to do with the fact that the brake pads are typically not sitting flush with the wheels when the brakes are running, but there is a little bit of air in between that the brake pad has to travel until it actually hits the wheel or the brake disc, if it is a disc brake thingy. So, and to and this obviously takes some time and change in pressure, and with setting the valve to 1B, we actually get the brake pad on the wheel and apply a bit of brake pressure, and by setting it back to 1A, it is in a position where the piston is extracted from the brake cylinder just so far that the brake shoe is more or less sitting flush with the wheel and not applying any pressure yet. But it is faster back at applying pressure to the wheel. So that you don't have to release your brakes fully if you are not going to your stopping position and have to release them so that the train can run on. But on the other hand, it does not take this little amount of time to apply pressure again, because the shoe is already flush with the wheel. I hope this makes any sense. Schlabberbremse, it was called on Jörg Haas's channel with the silver link. It means that the brakes are at the wheel already but not applying any pressure, and can apply pressure with very little delay. And by running in the running position, the brake pads are away from the wheels, so that by some minor inconsistencies they are not worn. But there is a little gap between them, and by putting it into 1A position, the gap is more or less covered, and so we would put it into 1B to apply some pressure, and then if we realize we have applied too much pressure, we can put it to 1A instead of running, to don't have any brake force applied to the wheel anymore, but to be ready to stop our train by setting it to a higher position at any time without having this little amount of delay that the brake pads need to travel towards the wheel so that they can apply any pressure. Does this make sense? I hope it does. And this is why William set up the Führerbremsventil in the Vectron in a way that you switch from running to 1B, and then you can go back to 1A if you want. Yeah, this was our brake test. What can we test as well? We have a brake valve here that should throw our brake pipe to 0. It's not an Ackermann-Hahn, but it is replacing the Ackermann-Hahn. Yes, we are draining it to 0, and the brake cylinders get filled. And again, now our brake pipe gets filled again, and the cylinders should release as well. And CD Radar says, this reminds me of the function that the London Underground has against freezing of the brake discs, that it's always touching and creating heat so it doesn't freeze. Interesting. But this must be detrimental to not wearing your brake pads, right? And Spectre says, so if I go to directly from running to 1A, the pads will be moved or not? Sorry for asking again. This is an interesting question. I think this depends on exactly how your brake valve is set out. And if I understand it correctly, the modern brake valves would not move the brakes towards the wheels. So when setting it from running to 1A, actually nothing should happen. No change in pressure. It stays at 5 bars and at 0 and nothing happens. When putting it to 1B, brake pipe pressure gets reduced, cylinder pressure gets raised so that we have some force applied, and with setting it back to 1A, the shoes are not removed into their original position again, but the pressure is taken away, so that the shoes are still flush with the wheel, but not applying any pressure. This is how I understood it for the modern brake valves. Obviously there is a way, or they can be set up in a way that 1A moves them just to the wheel without applying any pressure. But the idea is that you don't do that. You don't move your shoes to the wheel and just wait for the point where you will actually want to use them, but you're applying pressure and then you're releasing it. That's the traditional way of stopping a train. Like, you always want to apply some reasonable pressure and then release it gradually to get to a proper stop. At least that's how I understand all this stuff. It is way beyond my technical education anyway, so I hope I'm not confusing more than I'm trying to clarify at this point. Good. I think we can run the train finally. Did we forget anything? We have the lights, we have the brakes, we have our PZB, we have the CIFA. The AFB, right, the AFB actually should give us some pressure in the cylinders without lowering the brake pipe. So this is the AFB holding brake, so that we can release our spring brake again. So this is why I want to turn on the AFB. Be careful, this only works if the if the reverser is set to a driving position, otherwise you won't get any brake pressure. And you can see here you are getting brake pressure in the cylinders. It looks a bit like it lowered the brake pipe pressure, so it is using the brake pipe again, but it does not correspond with that. So obviously the AFB holding brake here uses both train brake and direct brake to get to this point. We can release our spring brake. Let's see if it releases, and it released. AFB holding brake is applying the brakes on both bogies, and as soon as we apply some power, the AFB holding brake should release. So set the AFB to some speed. We don't have to confirm it, unlike in the Vectron where it is done much better, but nevertheless. And then I try to get on some traction, and it looks good, and at the same time we can hear the hiss and we can see the needle drop and the train move. Limited with a starting program, all brakes released, looks good. Next signal that we are passing is most probably bugged. This is why I'm not going faster than the 40. Why I'm not releasing, even though we are running up on a green aspect. But again, let's use the photo mode for that. What is weird with this signal here? This signal is actually showing an impossible aspect, in my opinion, as it stands there with our HP1. And what, in my opinion, does not work together at all is this white light on the bottom that typically indicates a signal repeater, and the mast sign together with the yellow triangle that denotes this signal as a signal that is at the same time a main signal and a distance signal, Mehrabschnittsignal, and it cannot be at the same time a repeater and a main signal. That is, in my opinion, impossible, so this white light here should not be there. What also should not be is that the 1000 Hertz magnet at this signal is active. Oop, sorry, I have to find my remote because my TV wants to shut off here. Obviously it's the green aspect. Nevertheless, we are getting 1000 Hertz monitoring here. Now distance to next signal would be the one on top. The white light for short braking distance would be on top of the green light. Top left. The bottom is only for repeaters. At least to my knowledge. And at any rate, no 1000 Hertz monitoring. Nevertheless, we got 1000 Hertz monitoring. And at the same time, you remember, we got a green signal. What is an HP1 or a KS1 with the KS system. And it had the downward pointing yellow triangle, what indicates that it also has Vorsignalfunktion, that is working as a distance signal. And no indication that we are running up to a limit in speed. No yellow 4, no VR2. And what are we running up to is a signal that is yellow. What in the KS system can happen? It is again a Mehrabschnittssignal, it's main signal and distance signal at the same time, and we are getting KS2. Here now we have the white light on top left. This is the thing, short braking distance. Yeah, why the magnet book? That is okay, but this 40 limit, set as 3 Kennziffer 4, was not announced. There is sometimes in the rules are exceptions that certain things don't need to be announced, but this is usually only on lines that have very slow top speeds anyway, like on lines that have a top speed of not more than 60. You always have to be prepared to run into an HP2 without warning. But here we don't get the warning for the 4. The 40 is not announced at all. We got a clear signal on the distance signal. So we were expecting actually that we can go without limitation, and at the same time we are limited at the next signal to 40. And what we have here again, this time not in a diamond but in a squarish signal head, we are sent into the track for the opposite direction. And this is something, we can access this from the photo mode. Where is my photo mode? I don't want to go into the photo mode, I wanted to go into the map view here. So here we can totally see how we are sent into the track for the opposite direction. And then we are going there. And then we are going back in the regular track. Why this happens, I'm not quite sure. Why we are not just running on our regular track, I can't see a reason for this, but nevertheless it is happening. So obviously, because we got a set of 6 that was switchable, this should be permanently installed Gleiswechselbetrieb. And from what I thought that I had found out, this only can work if we now have signals on our line. Proper signals that are switchable. Yeah, it is in reconstruction maybe. But then we should have the set the 6 as a sign, not switchable. Limit to 90, and then, again, an interesting thingy here. We don't get proper signals, but we get an isolated NE2 board for our line here with the arrow that tells us that it belongs to here. And what do we have here? This little triangle is the equivalent for the white light on top of the signal, indicating that the brake distance is shorter. It is for only 1 weekend, so they don't want to bother. Okay, but they built the switchable ZS6 for 1 weekend. Or they just made it look like one. So this white triangle downward pointing on top of the NE2 board is the equivalent of the white light on top of the signal, telling us that the braking distance from this isolated NE2 distance signal board that acts as a distance signal is shorter than 95% of the regular braking distance. And since this is representing the distance signal, it is okay that we are getting 1000 Hertz here. And since we were told to prepare for a stop by the KS2 on the signal, on the last main signal, we have to prepare for getting a 500 Hertz as well. And since we are a PZBM train, we will be controlled to 35, respectively 30, according to the operating rules, when taking into account the margin of safety. And so we had to slow down to 30. What is happening now? Is there a red signal that we are driving up to? No, because we actually are on a line that is not signaled with proper signals into this direction, but we are getting this thingy here, the trapezoid board with the kilometer number on it, that acts according to the signal directive as an entry signal into a station when coming from the line for the opposite direction. CD Radar says, because the right track is in reconstruction, it is only for 1 weekend. See, they are putting new concrete sleepers. Are they? You are seeing things. But the signals are still on and everything. Yeah, this is our entry signal here for the next station, obviously. So we will have to stop at it, because we did not get any... We did not get any indication that we can pass it. We did not get an order number. What is it? 7 that allows us to pass it. What we do, we stop in front of it. Okay. And what do we do now? We don't actually need our brake because the AFB holding brake will hold us. We contact the signaler. Proceeded restricted speed, and now we have permission to go inside. This would be probably the order number 1 that allows us to go inside, but still the combination of isolated NE2 and trapezoid board on the line, so no proper signals, with the switchable ZS6 is not what I have thought I have learned about this, right? So if this is actually a thing that can happen in real life, I don't know. Maybe someone knows more about that. So now, since I stopped in the 500 Hertz monitoring, I'm limited to 20. And when passing this trapezoid board, I should always take into account that this is protected with a 2000 Hertz magnet that is maybe on. And you see the 500 light switched to a white Befehl 40. This is something that does not work on the Vectron, for example. Last time I checked, the Befehl 40 indicator never lights up. And here it works. So, don't forget to hold it down the Befehlstaste, the override key, and until we have passed the 2000 Hz magnet. And then we are back in the 1000 Hz monitoring, can accelerate to 40. And we are switched back to the regular track. So this was our opposite track experience. If you think CD radar is right, this was because there was construction work going on. Thousand Hertz ended. We could accelerate, but we are still in a limit of 40 track speed wise, so no point in accelerating. Just stay at the 40. Probably our train is not across the switch. Yeah, there is a lot of dynamic in the speed, and even though the PCB monitoring ended, we don't really want to accelerate. We're getting an HP2 here. That, as you can see, nobody actually announced this HP2 now. Right? Last signal that we passed was the Trapezoid board, what was a red signal, and obviously the Trapezoid board does not have any form of distance signal functionality. So we don't know what we are actually encountering. So this is why we are limited to 40 as a Zugfahrt auf besonderen Auftrag. And now it ended being a Zugfahrt auf besonderen Auftrag, because now we got our HP2. Tiger, is this line a great one to buy? It seems to be a great one, waiting for more French lines personally, but anyways, I really love Germany, so it's not a big problem for me. The Rhein-Ruhr Osten is a line that I would definitely pick up on a sale. It is an oldish one, so I would not pay full price obviously, but you can pick it up on a sale quite often for big discounts, and it's definitely worth it. It's a great line with a lot of stuff happening. It's rather short, but it has two different paths that get you from Wuppertal to Hagen, and I definitely enjoy it. It has two big yards. Am I already across the switch? Yeah, now I can actually accelerate it, not really pay attention. But now after the HP2, the rules for anschließender Weichenbereich and ensuing interlockings are the ones that tell us when we are allowed to accelerate. And that means now we can accelerate. There will be a limit to 60 coming up later. But at least to 60 we can accelerate. Inspector says has some quirks like abrupt changes of direction on the tracks, not round and smooth. Yeah, you are right. It has some quirks, as we have seen already in the service. There are a lot of signaling quirks, PZB quirks, but it allows you to use the G6, the shunting locomotive. What is a nice one, even if it comes with a lot of quirks. But if you can pick it up on a sale with a proper discount, don't hesitate to do it. I'd rate it below the Ruhr-Sieg Nord, but still it's one that I don't want to miss in my portfolio. Ah, yes, I do not want to buy any DLC at full price in the game. 35 euros for one line is crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Especially since they are so reluctant to fix stuff that does not work from the onset. That has cooled down my motivation for this game actually a bit. So we're getting a VR0 because we fiddled around so much in the beginning. We have to slow down below the 70 at this point anyway. When we are hitting the 500 Hertz, we're not supposed to be faster than 45, I guess. And then 30 after 153 meters. If I had to buy a German-Austrian route at full price, I would choose Rosenheim. Oh, you're a Rosenheim fan. Oh wait, I was thinking there was only one line with the Ruhr name, so I was thinking you were driving on this line. Anyway, my bad. No, there are actually three. The Ruhr-Sieg Nord, that was the one that we used in the beginning of the stream. Then this one, Rhein-Ruhr Osten, what actually connects at Hagen main station. And then it is the Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr. What I said, well, I can't see the appeal until I played it for a stream with the anschließenden Weichenbereich, where I have to say it's a really short route, but not at all a bad one, and it looked really nice when we pulled it out again. Now the 500 Hertz. So don't worry, I will not play this service fully. I just want to be on the track that leads us to Hagen, and then I will leave it there and just show. I'm actually not doing it correctly, right? Just go back to 1A. And now we can go. We're still in the regular monitoring, that means we don't have to stay below the 20. Or did we drop? No, we did not drop. We can go 30 at this point. Top 3 or top 5 lines in Train Sim World. That is really difficult because it changes. It changes over time. In Germany, Ruhr-Sieg Nord is one of my favorite ones. Sandpatch Grade, since it was my first one, probably is one of my favorite routes. The Brighton Main Line is a route that I enjoy a lot. The Arosa line is among the best, but there are still many more. So, now it looks as if we're going into the wrong direction track again, but we are not. So we don't have to stop. We're just going across a set of switches to end up in the regular track on the diverging line here. I think the limit is 60 here for the switches. We did not really get a speed limiting signal. We got a HP2 that limits us to 40. So I think going through the whole line with 40 until the train is through the switches is okay. Sandpatch Grade is one of my favorites too. The mood in this line is wonderful. Yeah, I just can agree with that. Interesting. Meiner Riesa Dresden. Riesa Dresden is definitely one of my favorites too. I just forgot that. Rosenheim Salzburg, I don't own yet. Southeastern High Speed, lots of traffic with add-on logos. Yeah, Southeastern High Speed is a big one, definitely. But to be honest, I love driving the Javelin, but the high-speed parts are sometimes a bit dull, aren't they? So now we can accelerate, and there are so many services that go between Gravesend and what is this other thing on the other side. So this little part of the line, that's the only part where you can use the class 700, for example. And for some reason I enjoy driving the 465 is a great train, no question at all. The networker. This I enjoy driving really a lot. I would also enjoy driving it on different routes. Yeah, now we are on our way to Hagen, passing this big yard where you can do a lot of shunting missions with the G6 in this DLC here. It's a personal preference, but I really don't like driving in UK routes. He says Southeastern is an exception. Okay. Well, it is really hard to pick a route that I really don't like at all. And the favorites are switching around a lot. So, go back to the main menu. And go to Hauptstrecke München-Augsburg. What is a route that I know that CD Radar played a lot, and one of those that did not really light my fire so far, because there are so many quirks in PZB, also in signaling in it, even though it could be a great route because it has a massive amount of track and possible paths for trains and everything. It has 3 categories. Not to the, yeah, to the trains. Choose a route. Has regional trains, S-Bahn, and the ICE. Actually, most of the track is 3 pairs of track that you can use. And I'm not driving anything now. Unfortunately, some of the regio trains that are allowed to go 160, you can run with only one locomotive, the Traxx 2, the 146-2, that can actually go 160, because the 143, the 112, and also the 110, they are limited to 120, respectively 140, so they can never stay on time because they cannot go on the 160 track here. And the Eurosprinter cannot be used for passenger services on this track. So if you want to do the regio trains, you have to use the 146. But what I wanted to do actually is to spawn on foot. What does he say? Maybe it's because I'm French, but I would really like to see the LGV being extended with more lines. Well, I'm not French, but I totally agree with that. I would love to see more French content, and not only high-speed content, but normal signaling and normal traffic with regio trains. And France and SNCF has so much to offer on this front. And I have seen someone on Dovetail forums who were modeling some old French locos. Did they? Bombastic. Yeah, actually I wanted to spawn in Mammendorf. Why in Mammendorf? Because in Mammendorf we actually have a situation where we have signals, exit signals, that have a fixed status 6 sign on them. I'm getting a bit hoarse, right? Well, it's been a busy week. So, Mammendorf. Nicht einsteigen. The 425 from Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr layers here. It is not the train, but we have it on others. This is the 423. And I just take the liberty to jump in and show this sign. Set a 6 in the fixed variant. And why do... Just check that nobody runs me over. Why do those signals always send us into the opposite direction? That is due to the layout of the track here. up until we get to Mammendorf. This is on the right are the trains coming from Munich. And we have a layout of the track that has actually 3 pairs of track. The topmost is the high-speed line for the ICE traffic. The middle one is the, let's say, normal line for the regio trains. And the top, the bottommost 2 lines are for the S-Bahn traffic. And in Mammendorf, this ends because after Mammendorf, we are getting to a track layout with only 4 tracks. So if we were to go on with the S-Bahn, what the S-Bahn does not do, at least the services that we have in the game do not go on here, there is no technical possibility to get this train to the then right one. This is here, the second one, if you count it from the bottom, right? It is no way to get this train over there. It can only go here on this track, and then it would have to reverse back into the station to get there. So when a train is leaving on those 2 tracks to the left, then the only way is that it ends up here on the bottommost, on the left track. What is the track for the opposite direction? And this is why we always have a fixed set of 6 here. At least this is my interpretation. And what is going on the chat? But it didn't actually it didn't actualize his work anymore, and everybody is saying that it seems good to get his locos into the game, and so Dovetail doesn't want to spoil a future DLC. Southeastern is broken, CD Raker? No, the Munich one is broken as hell, because there are many green signals with 1000 Hertz magnets on, some green signals with a 2000 Hertz magnets on. There is a lot of weird stuff going on. You can still play it, but it needs to be fixed. Then it could be a great route. So this is what I wanted to show in terms of use of opposite direction track. And typically this is something that is provided in the signaling box logic, but rarely used, because usually those trains go back to Munich. Those S-Bahn trains from Mammendorf back to Munich, and so those are the services that you can't be happy anymore. I wanted to travel to Mammendorf in real life, CD Real, and why would you want to do this? And and Alex says, wait, it's one of my favorite city in real life, and I would also buy this line in the game. He says about Munich. Well, I don't have much confidence that it will be fixed anytime soon. But it definitely... Well, it is a DLC, you can pick it up on a sale. If it is discounted, it is no money wasted, right? But you have to be prepared. Why can I not sit in this train? You have to be prepared that you encounter some weird behavior on the PZB front. Then I will sit here. No, I don't want to take over the service and drive it from the middle cap. This is obviously not something that we want to do. Inspector says, should the Gegengleisanzeiger not be behind the switch? Technically, a train could turn left with an Ersatzsignal and not be on an opposite track. I don't think that this is possible. For the siding, you mean? Because that is only a siding here. I think this cannot work because this is not a main track that is used by train services, but then it would be a shunting service if it was supposed to go into the parking track. And for shunting services, the rules for running on the opposite track do not apply, because shunting services can go anywhere as long as it is allowed to send them along a certain track. And the shunting service would probably not be sent away with a proceed signal at this point. So I would expect, if they sent us into the parking track, as you name it, to not get an Ersatzsignal, but the SH1. So the signal would stay red and we should get an SH1. And then we are not sent away with a proceed signal, but we are a shunting service sent to the parking track with the SH1 on the HP0. And then we don't need the Z6 Gegengleisanzeiger for us. That would be my interpretation. Alright. I think that was my program for today. We can go through the DLCs that I have here. If I have forgotten anything, that is great. Yeah, I forgot Dresden-Riesa. Dresden-Riesa is maybe the one big DLC that is a must-have for German routes, because it has so many different things to offer. But then sometimes the biggest things go out of focus. Thank you, Professor Tigers. Well, I hope you enjoyed it a bit, even though it is not the biggest thing in the game. But still, it is super interesting. Here, what I bought is the Bernina Linie. I have not played it yet, but this is something that will come up in the next streams, definitely. Birmingham Cross City is a line that I like a lot, but I don't play it so much. Boston Sprinter is one that I like a lot. Carampas is a great one, but it always takes a lot of time. Clinchfield is a gem. Harlem Line, Horseshoe, they are all good, but not the ones that... Actually, the London Underground is one of my favorites, one too. Even though it is quite special, but I also like the feel of it. Long Island Railroad, I am still looking forward to buying the new version of it, because it is a great one too. Still fascinating by the fact you put so much energy into your videos. Well, it is about organizing stuff in my own brain, and by putting it in a presentation is a way of checking if I really understood things in a way that I can reproduce them. And sometimes I can get more information by real experts, and there is no harm in sharing it, I think. So this is at least my approach. Niedertalbahn is a gem too. Northern Transpennine is maybe my favorite British route. So I have 3 lines that I can always play to calm me down, and this is the Sandpatch Grade, this is Ruhr-Sieg Nord, and for the UK it is Northern Transpennine. This is a really, really great route. It is oldish, forgotten, but it's a great one. Canadian routes, I want more Canadian routes too. Peak Forest is a cute one. Peninsula Corridor is one that is really good too. Ruhr-Sieg Nord, Sandpatch Grade we mentioned. Schnellfahrstrecke Köln is a good route too, but not so spectacular. Schnellfahrstrecke Kassel-Würzburg is a good route, but it takes a lot of time and sometimes a bit dull to drive these ICE trains. Sherman Hill is the one that I like very much. Spirit of Steam, well, Steam one is especially a one. Trees Valley is a good one too. Tarante Rampe also has a lot of potential. It is a bit the extension to Dresden-Riesa. The Holiday Express, well, it is also there, and it's a fun thing. West Cornwall Local is a good one. West Somerset Railway obviously is also a gem. Definitely within my favorites. You see, I fell a bit behind with the DLCs recently published and released, because I was a bit miffed by the fact that so many things that were hyped when Train Sim World 4 was released are still not working and are not really getting on the way, but they pumped out really a lot of expensive DLCs that might be good, but you can see the same thing is happening again. Like, they have some bugs in it and they fix some minor things with the first update, and then it is forgotten. Too much complicated, the signaling in Spirit of Steam. Well, this is the thing that we have to get as well. A castle is opposite, yet same as America. You go really fast, but it is boring as well. Yeah. The line from Mainz is a great one too. Well, that is the linke Rheinstrecke. That one I did not buy because it was sold on Steam for 80% off, and I'm still waiting for the same to happen in Epic Game Store, because I made myself a promise for some DLCs I don't buy them on Epic Game Store, and if it was sold on Steam for a lower price, and then I just wait until I buy it on Epic Game Store. And actually I own the Linke Rheinstrecke on my Steam version of Train Sim World 4, but I usually don't play that because it is not the main one. Nevertheless, there is a lot of good stuff in the game still, even in the oldish routes, and even if the routes are old and you have played them a lot, you can still discover new stuff. Like in preparation for the stream, it was the first time that I discovered that the Traxx 2 185.5 actually has the Führerbremsventil set up in a way that putting it from running to 1A, it doesn't change the pressure in the brake pipe. It does not work on every locomotive that way, but it does on this. Nice thing. Spectre says true. I think one has to let go of expectation that the next update will make the game like it should be. Yeah, this is if you stick to this expectation, you will get disappointed all the time. How many GB is your game with all your DLC? Actually, it was really big after Train Sim World 4 came out. It was something north of 800 gigabytes. So that I actually had to move it from my SDD to my secondary hard disk that is much bigger. And I think it did not shrink since then. They reduced the size of some DLCs afterwards, but it is still a huge chunk. So I can maybe check if I can see it in my Epic launcher. How big the installation size is at the moment. No, this is the editor. Nonsense. It is running, so I have to go to black screen for a moment. Otherwise I cannot see it. But this does not matter. I'm at like 150 on Xbox, but 800 is phenomenal. It is much smaller now. So my complaints might have helped something. It is 358.63 gigs now. So obviously they at least fixed that. But after Train Sim World 4, and it was always this bumpy transition on Epic Games Store because all the old DLCs that were sold in a bundle did not work and other things had problems and so on, and it took weeks until we got there, and it was north of 800 gigs then. Now it is 358, so they must have reacted to that. I was chatting with JD at the time about the missing the content in Epic Games Store, and at the same time about the file size, and he promised me to raise it with the team, and then obviously something worked for a change. It annoys me that maps that I don't play at all and don't want to take up most of the space to see the radar. Yeah, then don't have it installed. Or don't have them installed. Well, but it's actually so that there is not really a map that I totally don't want to play. Can't think of one. Anyway, thanks guys for staying with me with this quite technical stream and topic today. I hope it was not too boring or confusing or a waste of time. I enjoyed it very much looking into this part of the operating rules in Germany. Maybe we will look at it in the UK and in American systems as well, or in Austria, Switzerland, wherever, and compare it to what we have in Germany here. Again, I think looking at it always intensifies the little understanding of the matter that I as a layman can have, and well, nevertheless, it makes sense to think about it and try to understand it and share it for enthusiasts like me and playing the game on a simulator. Thanks guys, I wish you all the best for next week. Take care and see you around.